Alright, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be fishing white bass again, but actually it's going to be more of a serious video. So I haven't talked about this at all, really. But I went through some stuff last year. Let's just say it was life-changing stuff. So last year I got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which, you know, as a 26-year-old then, that's not something you want to hear. So this happened about like early last year, around May is when I started to, you know, figure out that something wasn't right. So yeah, I was just basically having symptoms that, you know, weren't going away. They were slowly getting worse. So eventually, you know, after about probably a month and a half of it not going away and actually getting worse, I finally decided to go into the doctor and, you know, see what he thought and what's up. Oh, there we go, there's a fish. Nice. Oh, it's a big one too. But yeah, you know, about May 6th. May 6th was the first day that I knew something was wrong. And, you know, I had actually symptoms before then, but, you know, May 6th was definitely the tall tale sign that something wasn't right. Well, it's actually a big fish. Did I get a master angler right away? Possibly. It's a nice fish to start. Not bad. Yeah, it's a that's a master angler. Master angler right off the bat, 16 1/4. That's pretty cool. It's always a good day to start off with a master angler, especially when you're talking about a touchy subject. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Nice master. Anyways, so, you know, this basically all started with a cough. I had a cough that I thought was called long COVID or something, and it wasn't going away, and it was a pretty deep cough. Like, it was coming from my chest. You know, you're one of those, like, you really feel it in your chest. That's basically what it was. So yeah, I had that going on. Thought it wasn't like anything crazy. Thought it would just go away, but I started to lose my appetite a little bit, and I don't really know when that really happened. But yeah, I started to lose the appetite. Didn't really think much of that because, you know, that happens. Sometimes you just aren't as hungry as you usually are. But like I said, May 6th came around and I knew something was wrong. So it was about 5 in the morning on that Friday. I woke up drenched in sweat, and, you know, that's kind of when I knew, well, that's not normal. Why do you wake up drenched in sweat? Like, absolutely drenched. So yeah, I woke up drenched, and it sucked, not gonna lie. It was not fun waking up like that. So that happened. I didn't really think much of it. I thought, you know, I don't like that, but, you know, I didn't do anything. So I waited again to the next night, and it really didn't happen the next night. But then the night after that, so that would have been Sunday. So Sunday morning, I woke up again around 4 or 5 a.m. and I was completely drenched. So, you know, at that point I was like, that's not really that good. So what happened from there? Well, the symptoms got worse. I kind of put it off because, you know, who wants to go to the doctors? I was never, you know, I never really went to the doctors. So I was like, you know, I'm not going. Nothing's wrong with me. So I let that go again for a while. Things were getting worse. The appetite was getting worse. It was getting hard to eat food, really. I had to literally, like, force myself to eat food. The food tasted terrible. Like, salty things were way saltier than they usually are. I don't know, just really weird stuff. So I was losing weight, like, actually quite a bit of weight. So, you know, I was 189, I think, at my heaviest around the time, you know, it started happening. And by the time, you know, I finally went to the doctors, you know, I went down like 10 pounds, 10 to 15 pounds, somewhere around there. You know, and that was over the course of a month, maybe 2, which, you know, I finally went in like a month later after getting the night sweats. So, you know, a month later, finally went in, but actually before that, my neck started to swell a little bit. The lymph nodes on my neck, like right here. These ones right here, and maybe the one right here, I can't really remember too much, but it kind of swelled. And you know, I basically diagnosed myself there. Yeah, I knew what was wrong with me at that point, so I was, you know, a little sad, you know, didn't know what to think kind of thing. But, you know, at that point when I went in, nothing, it was just, everything was getting worse. And then the lymph nodes swelled, and, you know, that's when I went to the doctor, and he was like, yeah, you might have something going on. And he looked at me, he looked at my neck, he asked my mom, does his neck look swollen to you? And, you know, he basically, you know, knew there was a problem. So he set me up for, you know, quite a bit of tests, a bunch of blood panels, which, you know, those all came back like all over the place. You know, stuff was way out of the normal. The white blood cells were double what they were. Hemoglobin was low. You know, just a bunch of stuff. You know, I can pull it up and show right now, honestly. Well, I'm trying to find fish, but yeah, everything was just off. And he ordered a CT scan. No, he didn't. He ordered an X-ray. He ordered an X-ray first of my right side, and that was that same day he ordered that. That came back, and he called me as soon as he got the results, and he was like, I need you to get a CT scan, like, ASAP. And at that point, I was like, I was pretty scared, you know. I was like actually freaking out a little bit, and anxiety started to kind of develop a little bit, which that in itself was that's a whole different battle. I could go on about that forever. But yeah, I got the X-ray, came back, and it showed that there was a mass on the right side, like right here, kind of in my chest area. And you know, it was about like the size of an egg, is what they said, 6 centimeters, I guess. And yeah, I was a little scared. So at that point, or the CT scan with IV contrast, you know, the one that makes you feel like you're burning up on the inside. It's not fun. That came back, and yeah, it was all over my chest. It was all over my neck. I mean, it was everywhere. But it wasn't below my diaphragm, which was good. So that prompted the PET scan, which, you know, if you've gone through lymphoma, you know what that is. And it's basically like a CT scan with just a different dye contrast. It's like a radioactive glucose, which, you know, come to find out, myth true and be told, that cancer does feed off sugar, so it metabolizes off of it. So basically, it shows how much glucose is absorbing into the lymph nodes, because the lymph nodes are cancerous, so it's, you know, thriving off that. So it showed how bad it was, and, you know, there's probably like at least 10 or so, maybe a dozen masses around my chest. There was, you know, oh, there's fish all over. There was, you know, quite a few in my neck. At that point, they were still swelling in my neck, so it was visible. Basically, the PET scan there, it determined that I had lymphoma, but it didn't determine what type yet. So it could have either been non, or it could have been regular Hodgkin's. Why am I not catching fish? There's so many fish. But yeah, after that, the biopsy came. So after the PET scan basically determined I had lymphoma, I got a biopsy about right here. Maybe you can see it, maybe not. It depends on the light. Come on. Come on. There we go. Getting hard to catch for some reason. I don't know why. There's so many around me. That's another big fish. Another probably master. Oh, line falls. I'm telling you, Lake Erie alone should probably bump up the master angler for white bass. They're so easy to catch. But I'm after that like 18-incher. I had the biopsy, and this, you know, the diagnosis process was about like, you know, 3 weeks. It was pretty quick. I had so many appointments, like at least 2 or 3 a week. You know, actually maybe, you know, probably like 3 or 4 a week. It was just like, it was nonstop. So many different blood tests and everything. But yeah, the biopsy happened like about right after I lost that fish. right after I had the PET scan, you know, and they took a piece of, you know, one of the bigger ones that they could feel actually physically on my body. A week, maybe more, I can't really remember. I know it was at least a week. You know, that was a nerve-wracking time, just always checking my emails, trying to see if it came in or not. And gosh, it was just so much anxiety, because they do two different tests. So they do like a wipe test of, you know, the actual, I don't know, blood, or it's something weird. There we go. Oh. But they basically do a test to see if it's non-Hodgkin's, because somehow they can figure that out by one of the tests, by how it looks, I guess. And that test came in first, and yeah, oh my God, thankfully it didn't say I have non-Hodgkin's, because non-Hodgkin's actually is the worst one. It's harder to treat. So I was waiting on the actual like surgical biopsy, or pathology, the pathology one. And that one came in like way after that the other test came in, and you know, it was nerve-wracking. And once I saw that email pop up that it came in, my heart just sank. My heart absolutely sank. But yeah, that test came in, and I just sat there and just stared at it for a second. I went to my mom, and you know, basically we're gonna look at it together. So I just went for it. I opened up that thing. So basically I see almost all the tests before my doctor even tells me, because it pops up on, you know, my chart. That's what it's called. I go through Beaumont Systems, which is like similar to how Henry Ford operates. Oh yeah, the email of it coming in. So yeah, it scared me. But I just went for it. I opened it up. I went right down to what it said the diagnosis was, and I just leaped out of the air. Thankfully, I got the basically most treatable form of Hodgkin's that you can get, which is, you know, classical Hodgkin's lymphoma, nodular sclerosing, which is the most common too. It's basically, you know, you get a bunch of fibrosis death from the cancer and everything trying to fight the lymph nodes or something, I guess. I didn't really read much on it, because, you know, I don't really want to, but that's the diagnosis I had. And basically my PET scan determined that I was stage 2, because it was in my chest and it spread to my neck area. And I was 2B, because I had B symptoms because of the night sweats, the weight loss, I guess fatigue. I forgot to mention that. I guess I had, you know, fatigue from it, the cough. Basically I had most of the B symptoms that classifies that, you know, it's more of an advanced, I guess, lymphoma or Hodgkin's form. A lot of people don't have symptoms, which that makes it trickier to actually know that you have cancer, but my B symptoms basically, you know, showed me that I had cancer. So that happened, and basically I'm through the diagnosis process, and shortly after that I was set up to do chemo. I was set up to do ABVD plus Rituxan, which is an immunotherapy, because I had my CD20 was also invaded by the Reed-Sternberg cell, which is the cancer cell for Hodgkin's. And that immunotherapy basically targets that. So I was set up to do that regimen, which, you know, your CD20 typically isn't invaded with Hodgkin's. It's usually invaded with non-Hodgkin's. That's a popular non-Hodgkin's immunotherapy. But yeah, I had that all set up to go, and the plan was to do 8 rounds or 12, you know, typically 12 rounds with my type. Yeah, I was set up to do 12 rounds of that, so 2 a month with a basically 2-week period. So that's typically how it goes. You get 1 week of, you know, it drains you, the chemo kind of takes you down, does its thing, and then you get a week of rest, and then begins the cycle. So it's basically, chemo's like an up and down cycle. So obviously, like I said, brings you down, it kills all, it takes your immune system down. Basically, it attacks the cells that it wants to, but it also will attack healthy cells too. So that's why, you know, a lot of people have different symptoms and reactions to the chemo, and different, you know, all the different things that happen. I had my first one plus Rituxan, and it was about an 8-hour day, because the Rituxan took about 4 hours to also do, and they have to go slow for the first time to see how your body reacts. What in the world is going on? There we go, I saw me. But yeah, the Rituxan, basically they do a bunch of pre-meds like Benadryl, Tylenol, so you don't, have any reactions. So they can treat it. They do a steroid, so you don't immediately feel any, effects of the chemo. So they give all these pre-meds and different stuff. And actually, I forgot to mention that I got a port put in too. So I got a portacath put in my chest area, which, that wasn't fun either. Easy procedure, kind of weird, but easy enough. They put it in, and there's a tube that runs up to my neck with a gauge, probably like a 12 gauge wire that goes right into my superior vena cava, I believe is what it's called, which is, directly goes to my heart. So when the chemo comes in, it directly goes to my heart to disperse around my body like pretty evenly. So it's just an easy form to give you chemo. A lot of people will get PICC lines in their arm and armpit or whatever, but the portacath is just, it's a lot easier to do. So yeah, they inject a little weird needle into there, and you're hooked up to this machine that the chemo gives you, or the chemo bags are hooked up to, and you get chemo basically through that method. Well, yeah, I had my first chemo, and it was strange. It was a strange experience. It lasted a while, but I had no issues. It wasn't affecting me at all up until I had the Rituxan. When I had the Rituxan, it was running for maybe about an hour, maybe longer, probably halfway through. I started to get a reaction, which is pretty typical. They say like 80% of people who get Rituxan, their first time they get a reaction to it. I don't know why. It's just I don't know. Hard to explain. You can probably just look it up if you want. But I had a reaction to it. My chest started to get tight, and I started to shake and get really cold, and my blood pressure was dropping. So the nurses were running after me, and they stopped the Rituxan, and they switched it out to a steroid, and they started putting a steroid into me again. And that slowly kind of made it stop. So thankfully that was, didn't last that long. But yeah, that kind of freaked me out, not gonna lie. That was kind of scary, because I heard, sometimes you can get pretty bad reactions to chemo and all these different meds and stuff, so they take that stuff really seriously. But yeah, I was done after that. So thankfully I went home, and I felt good. I felt good the rest of the day, and I felt good the day after. And it wasn't until Friday. I keep seeing them hit it. They're so small. Why are they so small? The chemo actually started to hit me Friday. So I felt a little weird, pretty drained. I didn't really understand what this feeling was yet. I felt just really drained. I was so tired. We decided to go to this like little party or get together or whatever, like an hour away. And up until we get to the place, I fall asleep watching like Pawn Stars or something. I'm pretty sure it was. I was trying to eat pizza, and for some reason, like, it was hard to swallow because my throat felt like it was so, narrow. And I was like, I wasn't saying anything, but I was kind of like freaking out. So most likely, like I said, that was that was chemo related. And it's nothing to worry about, but it's just a little scary to feel. So that was happening, and whatever. We start to drive home, and I started to get the really like shaky, scared feeling, started to like have trouble breathing. Like I was breathing really heavy and trying to like suck in air, which, for a term, it's called like air hunger, I guess. So I felt like I had trouble breathing, but I still really wasn't saying anything. And then got home, whatever, tried to go to bed, and it was just having this issue, and I was scared. I thought I had to go to the emergency room. I thought, I was having like a bad reaction to the chemo. So I was having a tough time, but all my vitals were normal. My oxygen was good, my pulse was fine. It was a little high because I was scared. Blood pressure was good. It turns out I was starting to develop a severe anxiety disorder, and maybe that's because of the chemo. maybe that's because of everything going on. Maybe it was just all starting to hit me. I was starting to feel the effects and it was starting to scare me. I don't know, but I started to really have a problem with anxiety there. So I told my doctor, because I had this issue for like 3 or 4 days after that Friday, and it was tough to sleep. It was tough to really do anything. I also felt, again, really drained from the chemo. So he prescribed me alprazolam in a 1 milligram form, you know, take as needed 3 times a day, which I didn't think was much at all, but you know, it turns out quite a few months later that was actually a fair bit of alprazolam. So I was taking that and I started to bounce back, you know. I was feeling a lot better and the anxiety was going away. I was starting to sleep better and actually get the rest I needed, which I'm not going to fault anyone. You know, if you need it, it's there for a reason, but just don't abuse it, which, you know, tends to happen more often than not just because you're wrongly prescribed, which in my case I probably was, or I was. And I was taking it 3 times a day, so, but, you know, it got me through chemo. So basically, all my chemos after that, after I had that Rituxan, they dropped the Rituxan because I had that really bad reaction, so they really didn't want to do it on me again. And honestly, it wasn't going to make that big of a difference adding that extra drug into my regimen, which I was only taking it was going to be once a month anyway, so, you know, it's not a big deal to take that one out, but the ABVD, you still have to follow that guideline. So yeah, I had my chemos, and they were about the same each time. You know, around my 5th, it started to get progressively worse. And mind you, I only did 8. I had a really good response in my halfway, which actually I accidentally had my PET scan done after my 3rd chemo, which was a big, you know, there was a problem with the scheduling and something happened. And I was supposed to have it done after my 4th, which is called, you know, the interim period. But actually I had it done around after the 3rd, which, you know, kind of maybe was a mistake, but it showed that I had a complete response. I can show you the picture of my before PET scan and my after PET scan after only 3 chemos. And mind you, after my first, like while I was having my first chemo, and my neck lymph nodes were actually they were going down. So the swelling started to go down, and you could noticeably see that my lymph nodes were actually going to normalish size. That was great. It was good to see that was actually working. You know, my symptoms after that chemo, like 2 or 3 weeks later, kind of around my 2nd one, my night sweats started to go away. I was getting my appetite back. You know, I was actually perking up. So my symptoms were all relieving, which that was great. Just feel that it was working. It was so good. So yeah, after that really good response, he basically, you know, my oncologist said, you know, I basically had a complete response. Come on, it's so hard to catch these fish right now. And then after my 8th, I had my PET scan, you know, 3 weeks later after I finished my 8th chemo, which, you know, he basically said, you know, I was done with chemo, I should be good. But typically for mine, you do the full 12, but, you know, at what point does, I'm not trying to deter, but like, what point is it doing any more good? It might clean up the rest of, you know, what's ever going on, but they basically say 90% of the cancer dies from the first treatment, which, you know, I basically saw was true. Like, everything turned out to be, you know, that was up, that, you know, I was feeling normalish again, besides, you know, the chemo effects. But yeah, anyways, I had my 8th chemo. I had my PET scan after that. 3 weeks later, got my PET scan, and I got my results. And basically my results were basically the same as my interim PET scan, which I was a score of Duval 2, so I was below my mediastinum blood pool, below my liver blood pool, which, you know, absolute complete response would be like a 1, but there's so many different factors that take into play. You have like inflammation, you have all these different factors that play into a PET scan. So they score it from a score of Duval 1 to 5, 1 being absolute best. There's absolutely no signs, no inflammation, nothing, which is what you want. But, you know, in terms of remission, it's not always the case. A lot of times it's just like a score of D2, which is still a complete response, but it just shows that there's inflammation, dead tissue, that'll still absorb glucose. So I was still a D2. My uptake levels were about the same as my last PET scan, you know, the one where after I had my 3rd chemo. So basically I was sent off to do radiation at this point, just to be sure that everything was gone. It was just a preventive measure because it's easier to treat. The first line of treatment is easier to treat than is the second time. You don't want it to come back. So that's the goal, is to wipe it clean for the first line of treatment. And the second line is obviously, it's pretty brutal compared to the first line. So yeah, I was sent off to do radiation, 15 sessions. So I had to do that for 3 weeks every day, which, you know, it is what it is. It was an interesting process. The only part that wasn't so great about it was I had to drive an hour each way to go do it every day for 3 weeks, which kind of, you know, it kind of sucked. And that's the reason. The reason is because I had to do proton because of my age. They wanted me to do proton radiation instead of regular photon, which is, you know, the typical normal radiation. Proton, it's just, there's less chance of secondary issues from the radiation. And because I'm young, I just turned 27 at that time. You know, this was in January actually. They wanted me to do proton. So in Beaumont, they only have one proton in the whole, you know, sector. So I had to go to this one location an hour away each day. So, you know, whatever, I had to do it. So it was interesting, whatever, nothing to really complain about. So the radiation each time took about like 20 minutes. You know, you're in and you're out. They go on a table, they put this mask over me so I don't move, and they were basically targeting this whole area. They weren't like doing individual spots, they were targeting my whole area, my thyroid included, which I don't particularly like, but you know, it is what it is. So I had that done and finished that February 1st, and I had 12 weeks after that. So this was actually about like 3 weeks ago, maybe now. I had my PET scan, my final PET scan, to determine if I'm in remission or not. And I did it, got my results. They were a little wonky. I had some spots showing up in my neck area. My tonsils were lit up, really uptaking a lot. So they think possibly it was inflammation or infection, but they basically believe that, you know, I'm in full remission. So count that as a win. And yeah, my doctor, my oncologist basically confirmed that I'm in full, complete remission, which a year of battling that. What a relief it is to hear that. So if anyone's going through that right now, remember that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll see that light. It takes some steps to get there, but you'll get there. So yeah, gosh, what a ride. You know, never in a million years would I thought I'd get cancer, especially being 26 years old. You know, I have so many other things worrying about, like buying a house, paying off my car, trying to, you know, pursue my career further, trying to do this, trying to pursue my, you know, my fishing career as well. And I just get, a bus just hits you and you get told you have cancer. What? It's just mind-boggling, and you know, it doesn't leave my brain ever. Each day it just hits me like I had cancer. What? It's just, that's so crazy. But you know, life happens. You can't control it. You just have to adapt to it. You got to respond to it in the best way you can, and hope for the best. And honestly, the big part that got me through this was my faith. That was a big part. You know, a lot of prayers were said during this time. A lot of things I was asking for to go, you know, go the right way. I was hoping and asked for, and you know, honestly, every one of those prayers, they were answered. And it's crazy. Can't believe that. My family was there for me. Basically, my mom was my she was my rock. She was one that basically got me through this. Like, she was there for me at each one of my appointments, you know. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have her during that time. My dad, my sister, my brother-in-law. Oh, can't catch these fish. But back to full-time work. Been doing that for about 4 months now. Still pretty tired. Feeling, I guess, the after effects of chemo, I imagine. Yeah. Come on, these fish are just short striking. Maybe I'll just double hand. Yeah, I'm back to my normal life after a year of after a year just unbelievable circumstances. Here I am, living my life and catching fish. Woo! One of my big things was fixing up my boat too. Got a new motor, which that was cool. It's always good having a new motor over something that barely starts. Pain in about 2 strokes. Fixed up my boat, and you know, I'm just happy as could be. Still on the antidepressant though, but once I get off alprazolam, that's the next step, is getting off that. I used melatonin to help me sleep, which they also say is helpful to use during chemo, because of one of the drugs, for some reason, I don't know, the bleomycin and ABVD, melatonin seems to help. Oh gosh, these fish are short striking. It seems to help reduce your chance of, you know, problems, I guess. I don't know. Look it up if you want. So I took it and it helped with sleep, so whatever. But yeah, from having cancer to cancer-free, life is good. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. That's all I can say. I was very down the dumps. I basically gave up on life. And looking back, you know, my attitude from the start should have been a lot different, but you can have regrets. You can't change anything. Just, it's a life lesson. Oh, come on. Oh my God, these fish just won't eat. So yeah, maybe we'll just finish out this video, catch a few more fish, and then call it a day. Pretty cool. Very nice weather today too. I'm out a little bit early so I don't get caught up in the wind. So it's pretty calm out here, especially for an east wind. Nice. Well, if you liked the video, if you like my story, please leave a like. That'd be greatly appreciated. Leave a like for everything I went through. I mean, that'd mean the world to me. Subscribe, that'd mean the world to me. Still want to hit my goal of at least 1,000 subscribers. Obviously I want more than that, but 1,000 has been my goal for a long time, so yeah, it'd be greatly appreciated. And hope to see you guys next time.